Hello. This week, since I wrote the commentary that you can find on Working Preacher, I decided to put a different kind of challenge to myself. Often I'm a physical teller who uses lots of gesture and some movement and some dimensions. This time, I'm picking up on a conversation I had this week and an article I read, and thinking about how they might challenge me to grow as a storyteller. The conversation I had was with a friend who talked about an orchestra conductor who occasionally would drop his hands. And at first my friend thought, well, he just doesn't conduct during that time. But as he watched more closely, he saw that he continued to conduct with his eyebrows. And the second was an article in the Biblical Storyteller, the editorial by Donna Marie, who suggested that rather than relying heavily on gestures and movement and drama, the most important thing is imagining and visualizing this story deep within yourselves. And if you do that work, the story will come across to your hearers, and they will get out of it what you, with all the time you put into it, have gotten out of it. So this week I'm simply going to tell the story, and I'm trying to only use this much of my body in terms of gesture and communication. Some Pharisees came to Jesus and asked him if it were legal for a man to divorce his wife, testing him. And Jesus answered them and says, "What did Moses command you?" And they said, "Moses allowed him to write a certificate of divorce and dismiss her." Jesus said, "Because of your hard hearts, Moses wrote this command for you. But from the beginning of creation, God created them male and female, and for this reason, a man shall leave his father and mother and be joined to his wife, and the two will become one, so they're no longer two, but rather one flesh. So what God has joined together, humans should separate." When he was in a house with his disciples, they asked him about this, and he said to them, "Any man who divorces his wife and marries another commits adultery against her. And any woman who divorces her husband to marry another commits adultery." And people were bringing children to Jesus so that he might bless them. But when the disciples saw it, they rebuked them. When Jesus saw this, he got angry and said to them, "Let the children come to me. Don't stop them. Because the empire of God belongs to such as these." I tell you, this is the way it is. Whoever doesn't receive the empire that God brings like a little child, they definitely won't enter it. Taking the children to himself, laying his hands on them, he was blessing them all. So you might want to try some different challenge you put to yourself. Maybe you want to challenge yourself to use your hands, to use space more judiciously. Maybe you want to focus on tone, voice, and variations of that, or pace. Find some way to tell the story in a way that stretches you this week, as Jesus is trying to stretch his hearers and the disciples with the message of what God is doing in the world. Blessings.